1 year ago, Anthony Edwards made a statement that had NBA analysts rolling their eyes and fans questioning his confidence. Standing in front of reporters after another playoff disappointment, the young superstar looked straight into the cameras and declared that Minnesota would be back in the Western Conference Finals. Not hoping, not trying, would be back. Most people laughed it off as typical young player bravado, but Edwards wasn't just talking, he was prophesying his own destiny. And now that prophecy is playing out in the most dramatic way possible. The kid they call Ant just led the Timberwolves to their second consecutive Western Conference Finals appearance, dismantling the same Golden State Warriors team that had crushed dreams across the league for over a decade. But here's the kicker. This isn't the same Minnesota team that surprised everyone last season. This is a completely different beast, built around Edwards' evolution from promising young star to legitimate championship leader. The question isn't whether Edwards can carry a team anymore. The question is whether he can carry them all the way to that elusive NBA Finals banner that's been haunting Minneapolis since 1991. Edwards didn't just predict the Timberwolves' return to the conference finals, he willed it into existence with one of the most dominant playoff runs we've seen from a player his age. When the Warriors came into Target Center thinking they could flip the script from last year's upset, Edwards had other plans. Game after game, possession after possession, he proved that last season wasn't a fluke. It was a preview of what Minnesota was building toward. The Warriors learned the hard way that this Timberwolves squad isn't just riding the wave of a miracle run anymore, they're legitimate championship contenders, and it starts with Edwards' transformation into the kind of player that doesn't just make big shots, he makes franchise-altering statements. What makes this run even more remarkable is the context surrounding it. The Timberwolves didn't just run it back with the same roster that shocked the NBA last season. They made the most controversial move in recent franchise history, trading away Karl-Anthony Towns, their former franchise cornerstone, and Edwards' running mate, to the New York Knicks for Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo, and future assets. On paper, it looked like Minnesota was taking a massive step backward, giving up their second-best player and most reliable offensive weapon. Critics called it a panic move, a desperate attempt to shake up chemistry that was already working. But here's what those critics missed. The Timberwolves didn't trade Towns because they didn't value him. They traded him because they realized Edwards needed to be the undisputed alpha. And sometimes building a championship culture means making the hard decisions that hurt in the short term. The Towns trade forced Edwards into a completely different role, one that required him to carry not just the offensive load, but the emotional weight of an entire franchise's championship dreams. Instead of crumbling under that pressure, Edwards embraced it with the kind of intensity that separates good players from legendary ones. Julius Randle brought a different type of veteran leadership, a blue-collar work ethic that complemented Edwards' explosive talent perfectly. DiVincenzo added the kind of clutch shooting and defensive grit that championship teams need in the margins. Suddenly, Minnesota didn't just have talent, they had identity. And that identity was built around Edwards' relentless pursuit of greatness. But reaching the Western Conference Finals for the second straight year isn't just about individual brilliance or smart roster moves. It's about proving that last season's magical run wasn't a once-in-a-lifetime moment, but the foundation of something sustainable and special. Edwards has elevated every aspect of his game, turning himself into the kind of two-way superstar that championship teams are built around. His scoring has become more efficient, his playmaking more creative, and his defensive intensity more consistent. The numbers tell part of the story, but what really matters is how Edwards has learned to impose his will on games when everything is on the line. This isn't the same young player who relied purely on athleticism and raw talent. This is a calculated assassin who understands exactly what it takes to win at the highest level. The reality check comes when you start comparing Minnesota's championship credentials to the true elite teams in the NBA. Making back-to-back conference finals is impressive, but there's still a noticeable gap between where Minnesota is and where championship teams operate. Edwards has proven he can be the best player on a conference finals team, but can he be the best player on a championship team? The supporting cast around him is solid, but is solid enough when you're going up against teams with multiple All-Stars and championship experience? These are the questions that will define Edwards' legacy and Minnesota's ultimate ceiling as legitimate contenders. What can't be questioned is Edwards' performance when the stakes are highest. He's currently being considered the favorite for Western Conference Finals MVP, a recognition that reflects just how dominant he's been throughout these playoffs. His ability to score from all three levels, create for teammates, and impact winning on both ends of the floor has reached elite-tier status. The kid they call Ant, who entered the league as a raw athletic specimen, has transformed into a complete basketball player who understands the nuances of playoff basketball. Every possession matters more, every shot carries more weight, and Edwards has shown he thrives under that kind of pressure. His clutch gene isn't just activated during big moments, it's become his default setting. The supporting cast question remains the biggest variable in Minnesota's championship equation. Jaden McDaniels has developed into one of the league's premier two-way wings, providing elite defense and reliable three-point shooting. Rudy Gobert anchors the paint with Defensive Player of the Year level impact, altering shots and controlling the glass. Julius Randle brings veteran playoff experience and physical toughness that Minnesota was missing. But championship teams need more than just good players in defined roles. They need multiple players who can create their own offense and take over games when the primary star is struggling. Minnesota has plenty of complementary pieces, but do they have enough go-to scorers when Edwards needs help carrying the offensive burden? Right now, Edwards and the Timberwolves are locked in a Western Conference Finals battle with the Oklahoma City Thunder, a matchup that perfectly encapsulates where Minnesota stands in the championship hierarchy. The Thunder represent everything the Timberwolves are trying to become: young, talented, deep, and built for sustained success. This series isn't just about reaching the NBA Finals. It's about proving that Edwards can outplay another young superstar in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, that Minnesota's supporting cast can match Oklahoma City's depth, and that this Timberwolves team is ready to take the next step from promising contender to legitimate championship threat. Every possession in this series matters, not just for this season's title hopes, but for establishing the foundation of what could become a dynasty. The Thunder matchup also highlights the evolution of Edwards as a leader and floor general. Going up against a team with similar talent and championship aspirations requires a different type of leadership, one that combines individual brilliance with the ability to elevate teammates in crucial moments. Edwards has shown flashes of this throughout the playoffs, but the Thunder series will test whether he can sustain that level of impact over 7 games against elite competition. This is where legends are made and pretenders are exposed. The margin for error is razor thin, and every decision Edwards makes will be magnified under the brightest lights basketball has to offer. What makes Edwards' championship pursuit so compelling is the historical context surrounding it. The Timberwolves haven't reached the NBA Finals since their franchise began, making this run about more than just individual success. Edwards isn't just chasing personal glory. He's trying to bring the first championship in franchise history to a fan base that has endured decades of disappointment and near misses. That kind of pressure can either crush young players or transform them into legends. Based on everything Edwards has shown throughout this playoff run, he's embracing that pressure and using it as fuel for greatness. The championship window for this current Timberwolves roster feels both urgent and promising. Edwards is still just 23 years old, entering his prime with years of elite-level basketball ahead of him. The supporting cast is talented and committed, the coaching staff understands how to maximize this group's potential, and the organizational culture has shifted from hoping for playoff success to expecting championship contention. But championship windows can close faster than anyone expects, especially in a Western Conference loaded with talent and ambition. Injuries, roster changes, and the natural evolution of team dynamics can alter everything in a single offseason. The answer to whether Edwards can lead the Timberwolves to the finals isn't just about talent or potential anymore. It's about execution, mental toughness, and the ability to perform at an elite level when everything is on the line. Edwards has already proven he can be the best player on a conference finals team. He's shown he can make the kind of plays that define careers and create legendary moments. The next step is proving he can sustain that level of excellence for 4 more wins against the best competition basketball has to offer, with the weight of an entire franchise's championship dreams on his shoulders. Here's the truth that nobody wants to say out loud. Anthony Edwards might be the most ready young superstar we've seen since prime LeBron James to carry a franchise to its first championship. His combination of elite two-way impact, clutch gene mentality, and leadership growth has reached the point where championship expectations aren't just reasonable, they're inevitable. The Timberwolves aren't just hoping for final success anymore, they're built for it. And Edwards is the engine driving everything forward. Whether that happens this season or requires 1 more year of development and roster refinement, the trajectory is clear. Minneapolis isn't just dreaming about championship parades anymore, they're planning for them.